Hello and good morning, and welcome to M&A Partners webinar on getting the most out of QuickBooks. So my name is Lily Pomfret and I am part of the Attleborough team at M&A Partners, but I specialise in QuickBooks as well. I am also joined today by my colleague David Talbot. He is our Director of the Business Services team here at M&A. So, what are we going to be covering today? We're going to first of all just take a quick look at QuickBooks, give you a bit of background information into the company. We're then going to have a look at what benefits there are to being on a cloud-based system compared to your traditional desktop programs. We're going to demo the QuickBooks Online using a web browser and a computer, but then we're also going to take a look at the QuickBooks mobile app. We're going to have a little chat at the end as well about different applications that can feed into QuickBooks. And then, as we said, hopefully we'll have 5 minutes or so at the end just to cover any questions or pull any additional information as we go. QuickBooks the main company is actually a company called Intuit, and they were founded over 30 years ago now and originally are based over in the United States, but are very quickly coming across Europe and making waves in the UK. QuickBooks Online is an accredited program by the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales. So that just means that everything that's in the program is actually relevant and it is going to be in line with what accountants would expect. At the moment, there are over 2 million businesses around the world using QuickBooks Online. This time last year, there was only 1 million, so you can see they've definitely been making some progress in the last 12 months or so. And M&A Partners are actually Platinum Pro Advisors of QuickBooks Online, which is the highest level that we can be. So we have a good number of clients now. We have a good working relationship with them to make sure that we're always up to date with our knowledge. So those of you who may be thinking about going to QuickBooks Online and thinking about the benefits versus a traditional system, when we say a traditional system, we're talking mainly about desktop programs such as maybe Sage or QuickBooks Desktop. And the problems with these really are, as you can see on the screen. So software updates, very time consuming to do, also a little bit costly if they're not included in your plan, and obviously whenever you're doing an update there's always a risk that something could go wrong and can cause problem to your data. Key people can't access the information very easily, and this is by the nature of the fact that you are downloading a program purely onto one person's computer, and that's the only person or only access that can have. Data is also not as up to date compared to QuickBooks or other online programs, purely just due to the nature of some features such as the bank feeds or receipt bank, which we're going to talk about later. As I mentioned, you often only have the program on one computer, so you often have to take that around with you, or you can only work in one place. And working with your accountant often means that backups have to be sent between us. It can cause problems to go on for a couple of days. It's also not the most secure if you're sending things by email, can have obviously access problems as well. So compared to those, what are the benefits of cloud accounting? So the first one really is that you can use it anywhere at any time on pretty much any device. So the nature of a cloud accounting system is that you are on a website initially, so anything that has an internet connection such as a tablet or a phone, you can pick up your data and it will always be the most up-to-date data that you've got. There's also no distinction now required between having a Mac or a Windows PC. The program will run on anything as long as you have a web browser installed. You will always have the most up-to-date program as well. So in the background, the online provider will always be making sure that upgrades are applied. You don't have to pay for these upgrades. All you'll get told is next time you log in, an update has been applied and these are the changes. Security is often the feature that most people have the questions about, and it's an area that providers are very hot on. So the data centers are backed up daily, and given that lots of programs also now connect with bank feeds, it is as secure as the online banking levels, and they have to obviously abide by the bank's security rules. So as you can tell, that's probably a lot more secure than maybe some things that we have in place ourselves. There's also the opportunity to integrate with what's called other apps. We will talk about this more detail at the end, but there's things available such as Receipt Bank, Expensify, just things that can help with having to data entry more than once. And finally, it's a lot easier to collaborate with your accountant. You can both have access at the same time. You can both be logged in the program at the same time, and any queries can be dealt with over the phone, looking at the same data, and genuinely all the information is just available a lot quicker, and you don't have to send backups, which is always a good move. So I think what we're going to do now is take a look at QuickBooks Online. So if I just load up the program, if you bear with me just one moment. Hopefully now your screen should all be moving into the QuickBooks Online desktop or the QuickBooks Online screen. If anybody can't see it, please do let us know. David is monitoring the chat box. So I'm going to do a very quick overview of the QuickBooks Online system and say this is based on if you were to log into a browser. So as you can see on mine, I've just gone through Google Chrome and we're now in. So whenever someone logs in, you're always entered into this home screen, and as you can see, hopefully we're in the dashboard here on the left-hand corner. Everybody's will always look the same. Unfortunately, it can't be customized like with some other programs, but it is highly interactive. So what you have are a number of reports and boxes available. So the first one, for instance, is this invoice. You have a list here that says your invoices are overdue. You can click into it, and with one click, we should be straight into the list and we can start to chase our customers and get some money and some payment. If we go back to the dashboard, what you can also see is there is an expense and a profit and loss report. So if we just change the date ranges on these, and we'll put this to this financial year as well. Again, all of these are hyperlinked essentially, so you can click into any of these numbers, find out what's made up. And the same with the profit and loss report. So the big thing to note on here is the difference between, you can see you have your dark line and then there's the slightly checkered. And the dark line is everything that is processed into your QuickBooks at the moment. And the checkered line are, as it says, things to review. And this is mainly anybody who has connected their bank via a bank feed. This is what they will see. And it's where transactions have been downloaded but haven't yet been processed. If you were to process everything, this is what your outcome would basically look like. So it's trying to give you an overall picture based on everything available. In the top right hand corner, there's also this privacy switch available. So if we toggle this over, now hopefully you can see all the numbers have gone. So it's a good feature if you're using QuickBooks maybe in public, you're on the train and you're trying to do a little bit of bookkeeping and you just want to keep the numbers hidden. You can just toggle between the privacy feature and then hopefully the numbers will reappear. Just keeps those numbers nice and secure for you. So the other feature on the home screen, and it's one that will also appear throughout the whole program, is you've got this black toolbar at the top. And in this little magnifying glass icon, it's called the search feature. So this will be the best place if you're trying to locate a particular transaction. This is probably the best place to try and find it. So as you can see, there is the recent transaction list here. So anything that's recently been processed, it will give it in this list, and you can click into any of these items and go back and make any changes if you need to. The other option you have is you can type into the search box at the top. So as you can see, you can put a date in there, you can search a nominal amount, you can search if you're looking for a supplier such as Anglian Water, for instance. You can type their name into the box and then it will show you all the transactions. Failing that, there is the little advanced search button, and this is again where you can do your search. You can narrow it down. Maybe if you're looking for a particular deposit, you can be a little bit more specific with the information that you're looking for. So if we just go back to the dashboard. So one of the big benefits of an online system is the ability to do bank feeds. And this is the bank account section on the right here. So if I just click into one of these accounts. So bank feeds is something which allows your bank to establish a link with QuickBooks Online. And what will happen is that all of your transactions, as they are processed in the bank, they will start to appear in your QuickBooks Online system. So obviously this is a brilliant tool for not having to data entry everything twice. It also saves on the data entry time, because as you can see, if I just scroll down the screen slightly, you can see the information that gets pulled through. So we have a date. If there is a description on the bank statement, this will be the description you see here as well. If there is an additional payee or name that they can pick up, they'll pull it through. It will then tell you as well whether it's money in or money out, so spent and received. So it's using really nice terminology for us to understand. In theory, if we were to pull up a paper bank statement, this should just be a direct copy. So we are in the for review section, which it says up here. And it's exactly that. We need to look at the transactions and we need to think about processing them. So in order to do this, you can click onto the transaction. It will then open up the screen that basically wants us to give it a little bit more information before we put it into QuickBooks. So the main thing you really need to be doing is thinking about what the expense is in relation to. So this one is coming through as a hotel. So hopefully if we start typing a travel expense in there, it sounds most reasonable. We then also just need to pick a VAT rate. So in this case, I'm just going to pick 20% standard. Every time you put something through, it'll ask whether you want to make this a default tax code. Again, it's just trying to make the process a little bit automated for you and a little bit easier. You have got the box here to add a memo and to put some additional description if you need to. But if you've allocated it in the accounts and you've allocated the VAT, all you need to do is press add. And then that's it. The transaction is now processed. It's been taken out of the list. And hopefully if we move to the second tab, which is called in QuickBooks, if I just click on there, you can see this is the expense we just processed. If at any point you've put something through and you think, actually, no, that wasn't right, I just want to start again, you do have the button on the right-hand side here just to undo, and then that will move it back to the for review section. So really what you need to be doing is if you are connecting your bank, you need to be making sure this for review list is always cleared, and then all the transactions are in QuickBooks. They'll be shown on your VAT returns. They'll be picked up in the profit and loss section. You can also have bank rules set up. So if you need to do some very complex transactions, such as maybe splitting a payment between a private and a business proportion, or a certain amount needs to go to light and heat and the rest needs to go to a standing charge code, you can create bank rules again, which just help to automate the process for you. So it's all really about saving time when you're doing data entry. To then reconcile your bank account or your credit card account, for instance, the cog in the top right hand corner, there is a reconcile button. And then this is where it will allow you to start your reconciliations. So on old systems, you would only really be allowed to reconcile a bank, but now you can really reconcile anything that is classed as a balance sheet code. So by that we mean bank account, cash accounts, credit cards. If you maybe have deposit accounts, anything that you've spent time working on, you can reconcile it and you can find it in this drop down list just here. It will tell you if the account has been reconciled previously, because it tells you down the bottom here what the last statement ending date was made up to. You also have the button in the right hand corner to find the history of any account to see when it was last reconciled and what balance to. So if I just dummy in some numbers here, just so I can show you what the reconciliation screen looks like. So what it will do is it will pull through all the transactions that it can find between the date that you've put in and the last reconciliation date. And then what you can do from this screen is obviously start to work through your reconciliation. If any of the transactions are maybe an incorrect balance or you need to change them, you can click on any line and then you've got the option to edit just here, and that will take you to the main screen so you can change the transaction without having to come out of your reconciliation and save, and without having to close too many things down. So it's a really handy tool. If at any point you do need to stop the reconciliation, maybe it's come to the end of the day or you've been called off to something else, in the top right hand corner here you have a button that says save for later. In the drop down underneath you'll also find the finish, and if you just want to stop the rec and pick it up another day, you can close without saving. So if we go for the save for later, you can see it will tell you that it was in the process of being reconciled, and when you're ready to pick it up again you can just click resume. So hopefully that's covered everything on the dashboard and any banking and bank feeds. So the other area I wanted to show you now was just the invoicing for both the customers and also the suppliers, because they're fairly similar screens. So in this plus button at the top, you can see under customers there's an option for invoice, and when the screen hopefully loads, there we go, we're there. You can see it's quite a nice layout screen. So you just need to work through the boxes. First of all, start by picking the customer. So you can pick your customer. Based on the information you've put in, it might pull through an address if you've got one. If you put an email address in, it will pull through an email address. You can then change your invoice date. It will default to today, but you can change that to any point. So if you're maybe working a little bit behind, it's not a problem. You then just work through and pick up your sales or your income. So what you can do in QuickBooks is set up default maybe descriptions or services that you offer. And when you do that, for instance, if I pick this party one, you can see it will pick up a default description and also a rate and a VAT code. So again, you can do all of this in the background and it can help to just speed up the data entry process for you. You can overtype any of these. So if you needed to actually change the description and maybe put a date in there, so if I just put today's, or maybe you'd agreed a different rate, you can change anything you need to and it will just work it through. It does just pull it as a default to start with. At the bottom of any screen as well, you'll see there's this little attachment section. So this appears on lots of different places. So whenever there is a paperclip, what it allows you to do is pick up an attachment. So if you just click on the paperclip, what it will do is it will then open your files on your computer, and you can find maybe a copy of an estimate, or if you're attaching maybe a copy of a cost that you've incurred and you're recharging it to the client, you can add the file in there, and then you can send it along with the invoice as well. Just keeps everything in one place on the system. At the bottom, there is also two options with regards to, first one, enable recurring payments. What you're able to do with a lot of settings in QuickBooks is to set up recurring transactions. So you can do journals, customer invoices, supplier invoices, and what it will do is it will just make the transaction for you, or it can prompt you and say you need to raise this invoice on a monthly basis. And again, it's just trying to automate the bookkeeping process and make it a little bit easier for you. If I just go back now to the invoice screen. Oh, it's taken me out of it. So if I just go back in. The customize button at the bottom as well. This is where you can choose what layout you would like. So you can change the invoice layout within QuickBooks. You can play with the color scheme and put your logo on, and it also allows you to have more than one style. So for instance, if you maybe have two different revenue streams in your business and you want a different invoice for both, you can pick up the different style from here, and then you can just preview before you send it out to the client, just to make sure that you're happy that it looks how you want it to look. The Supplier Bills screen is fairly similar to this as well. So again, under the plus button and in Bills, and when this opens, you can see it looks fairly similar. You pick your supplier, you say what the expense is in relation to, and again, you can set up recurring. So if you get maybe a monthly rent charge or a quarterly water bill, you're able to just have this so it recurs on a regular basis for you. We've had a question through, which I'll just cover now. So it says, how do you process an expense where only part is vatable? So how to do it is you need to basically split the expense down to show the elements of VAT. So for instance, if you had maybe a subscription and maybe £100 of it had standard rated VAT on it, you show that element there and it will work out the VAT in the bottom box just here. And then maybe there was an additional £50, for instance, that isn't vatable. You just show the additional £50 and then you put the different rate. So for instance, if I put exempt, you just need to break the transaction down into the elements just to show the different VAT claim, and you'll know if it's right because this box will always update itself. Hopefully that answered your question, Pauline, but if you have any others, do just pop them through. So if I just come out of this section now, I will briefly just mention payroll as well. Payroll is within QuickBooks. It's fully RTI compliant. It's also auto-enrollment compliant. I'm not going to cover it in detail today, purely just because there are a lot of changes going on with QuickBooks at the moment. The plan is that we're going to do another payroll specific webinar later on in the year. So do keep an eye out on that, and we will just cover the changes because, as the screen says, their current product is going to be discontinued in January, but nobody panic. We will have a plan sorted, and QuickBooks do also have a plan in progress, but we're just going to do it on a different webinar. So taxes is where you'll find, for instance, as it says, you've got VAT, and the new module that QuickBooks have recently released is CIS. Again, not going to cover this in detail today, but it's probably going to be another webinar later on in the year. But for VAT, it is fully VAT compliant, cash accounting, invoice accounting. If you were to change partway through the year, it can deal with all of this. To prepare a return, you just find the open return and we press the submit button here. It will then show us the screen. We can change the date that we're reporting to, and it will automatically update all of these figures for us. Those of you that are listening that have used QuickBooks before will be very glad to hear they have finally put the direct submit to HMRC button in. This has been a long time coming. They had it previously in their desktop system, but it took them a little while to get it onto the online. But finally, when you're ready to submit your VAT return, it is as straightforward as you press the button and it will then just ask you for your HMRC credentials and it will submit all the numbers in the background for you. There's none of this having to log in and type it and make sure you've put the right numbers anymore, which I'm very glad about. It took a little while, but we got there. So I think that's kind of everything I'd like to show you on the online kind of website version. So what I would like to do now is move us over to the iPad as such and the mobile app. Wonderful. So hopefully what you can see now is the iPad screen. This is, say, the mobile app. You can download it onto any tablet or any phone. It doesn't have to be an iPad. It can be any iOS device as well. And so this is what the application looks like. So similarly, you have your home screen and your dashboard. Very similar as to when the online, you have numerous reports, so profit and loss reports, your overdue invoices are on there again, your expenses are on there, and then at the bottom just a list of your bank accounts. If you have got a bank feed set up, it will allow you to carry out your bank reconciliation on here. So if you've got 50 transactions downloaded, you can sit and review these on your iPad or on your phone. You don't have to log into the website to do these. If we press the little button at the top, you'll see there's also the menu on the left-hand side. So as with before, we have our customer list. As you can see here, we've got some customers I've kind of demoed on there. Really handy tool if you're out and about, because based on the information you put in, what it will allow you to do is if you're on your phone and you have a mobile connection, then you can telephone the number you've put in. As well down the bottom, it's got a little map, so it can show you the address. It will give you directions as well if you need it. I do apologise for the slight flickering that is going on. Hopefully you can still all see the screen okay. But yeah, the more information you have on your customers, the easier it is when you're out and about and maybe you need to just find out a little bit information about where they're based. It also tells you what balance is outstanding. So if you need to chase them while you're on site, you can get a very up-to-date balance. The same can be said for the suppliers as well. Again, similar list. Based on the information you'll have in there, it will depend on what you can do and how much you can see. So one of the really good things about this is being able to do transactions on the go. So as we said previously, you can do your banking on the go. So if you've got transactions that need processing, you can sit and do these. But the other thing you can do is you can process your expenses. And the beauty is, because it's obviously a device that has a camera hopefully attached, you are able to add an expense. So you press the plus button. You can add your expense onto the system. So we'll put it in it today. And if you have the receipt to hand, you are also able to take a picture of this and add it to the system. So if I take a picture, so I've got to find my receipt. Not very straight, I do apologise for this. There we go, so we'll just use that photo. But at least if I was to lose that receipt now, at least it's stored in QuickBooks and the accountant at the year end will be able to see this picture as well. So they don't need the physical copy anymore. Obviously, you do still have to keep your receipts. You have a legal requirement to, but if something was to kind of go awry, it's not the end of the world. So we can put an amount in It will then ask us, how did you pay for it? So in this case, I did it through a cash account. If there's a supplier loaded, you can pick them. If there's not, it's not the end of the world. You can go past without having to list that. Then it's just what was the expense for. So in this case, hopefully, if I put it was an other expense. The tax, it's just asking for your VAT rate. So I'll say 20% standard. And then once I'm happy, I can press save. And then this is loaded into QuickBooks and anyone can see it. So if anyone is logging in on the online version through the website, they'll be able to see this expense processed. And there's a picture. If I click, there we go, there's the receipt just there. So it keeps it all nice and safe on the system for you. The other really good thing you can do through the app is you are able to raise invoices and estimates. So if we go to the home page, we press the plus button. You can see there's two options available, one for estimate, one for invoice. So if I show you the estimate one, first of all, what it wants us to do is just to pick the customer. So I'm just going to pick this one for now. The date, obviously you can put the date of whatever your estimate is that you're doing. I'm going to change it to some point last month. And then the expiration date you can set. If the estimate only has, say, a 30-day life or a 2-week, you can set a date so it will tell you when the estimate has expired. What you then just need to do is just fill out the boxes similar with the invoice screen. So you pick what it is that you're estimating for. So in my case, I'm going to just pick professional services. I'm going to change it and say we're actually going to have 3 units of this. So it works out the amount for me. I just need to say what the VAT rate is. So we'll do 20%. And then at the bottom, it's working out our subtotal, our VAT, and then the total as well. So once we're happy with the estimate, we can click save. And this will then generate the estimate for us here. So the really good bit about being on either a tablet or a phone is you can do all of this whilst you're out at a client's. And the additional feature you have is this little get signature which appears at the bottom. If you click this, you're then able to turn your device into a signature pad. So the client or the customer can sign their life away at their will. You can put a name as well as to who it was accepted by. So in this case, I've just done Joe Blogs. And if we click done, what then happens is QuickBooks recognizes that the estimate is now changed from pending to accepted. The signature is then saved on QuickBooks as well. It saves it as an attachment, so that signature will always remain on your system. So if anyone wants to query at any point, you can kind of show who signed it and when. And then you can see at the top, there's this big green button that says convert to an invoice. So in one click, we can then get all the details copied from the estimate. We can get it carried across into an invoice. And if we're happy, we just press save. And within a matter of minutes, estimate has been approved and an invoice is now in the system and ready to be sent out to the client. So you can see it's a really powerful tool, being able to do things while you're on site and you don't need to be at a desk or wait until you get home in order to do things. So we have a question that's come in that just says, is the receipts and estimates just on the iPad or phone? No, the receipts and estimates are a feature that within QuickBooks, so also on the, if I just disconnect the iPad, I can show you. Hopefully now you can see back on the normal screen under your plus button here, you have the option for customers and an estimate, and then you can also do, sorry, I lost my headset. You can also do your expenses as well on there, and you can show your receipts too. So it has the same features. If anything, the iPad one is slightly more stripped down, but those are just the main ones because they're the easiest to demo on the iPad. So I think that was everything really regarding demoing QuickBooks. The only other thing I'd really like to show you is the applications. The other ones are available. So QuickBooks have a designated site called apps.com. And this is where you are able to find a whole range of other third-party applications that will connect with QuickBooks. Some of the biggest players that people may have heard of are ones called maybe Receipt Bank. There's also kind of Expensify. There's lots and lots of apps, and they're always changing. And QuickBooks will always have kind of a featured that they like to promote every now and then. So at the bottom, you can see they detail it based on the type. So say you're in the retail industry, and maybe you're looking for something that will connect your terminal machine to QuickBooks to, again, help with having to data entry things more than once. You can see there's lots of apps around. They all get rated as well, so hopefully you can get a little bit of feedback from some other QuickBooks users just to find out how other people found them and whether there's one that's better than maybe another one. One that us as accountants use quite regularly is QuickBooks, or Receipt Bank it's called. And what I'm going to do is just flick back onto my presentation. And then what I can do is show you just their little summary screen. You can see there's one here in the middle just called Receipt Bank. It's a really powerful tool, and it takes the app just slightly further in that where you take a picture of a receipt or an expense, it will actually read the receipt and it will pick off some information such as the amount, the VAT, the supplier, the VAT code, all of these things that you're manually entering yourself, it can actually pick up and pull off for you. So it's a really powerful tool. If you would like some more questions or like a demo on that one, both myself and David are able to kind of provide a bit more information at a later date on that one. So just to wrap things up, and to summarize where we are, to basically get the most out of a cloud accounting system, you really need to have a look and review your bookkeeping processes. The biggest one probably being whether or not you would like to use the bank feeds. It's obviously a change to normal, and you may just need to adapt your processes in order to save the time and use the efficiencies that are there. Please feel free to get in contact with anyone at M&A to talk about whether or not it's a good move to go onto the cloud, which system might work best for you. M&A don't just support QuickBooks. We also have Xero, Sage 1, lots of other ranges of products. So we like to make sure that people are on the one that works best for those, because they're all slightly different. As I mentioned before, just keep an eye out for the payroll specific webinar that we're going to be running a little bit later in the year. As I mentioned, there's big changes coming with that, and we'd just like to obviously make sure everyone is aware and ready for the changes ahead of January. And I am now, I think, the fourth webinar that we've been running at M&A, and you should be able to find the whole series of the cloud accounting specific ones on our YouTube channel, which if you went to our website, you should hopefully find a link. There's one on there about Xero, so maybe if you'd like to watch that. Also just about cloud accounting in general. There's lots of information on the website and on YouTube for you to have a look at. So just want to thank everybody for listening. We've answered a couple of questions as we've gone along. If you have any other questions to ask now, please feel free. I'm just going to have a quick look through the list and to see if there's any that we've missed. So there's one about downloading expenses from the bank feed and splitting, and the previous question we had about splitting the part which is vatable. What I can do is if I just flick back into QuickBooks, bear with me one moment and I'll just move that back over. What you're able to do within the bank feed, you are also able to split that vatable and non-vatable element. The button is slightly different, which is where I just wanted to show you by logging in. When you click into the transaction, there's this button here that says split. And if you click this split button, this is where you're able to break down the transaction amount and select the different VAT codes. Also, if you need to maybe put it in different places, you can do that from on here. it gives you a little running total at the bottom, so you know if at any point you haven't fully analysed the transaction, it will tell you, just to make sure that obviously you are processing the correct amount. Hopefully that answered that question, Pauline. Let me just see if there are any other questions just to cover in the last couple of minutes. I don't think there are any specifically. So we're nearly bang on time. We'll leave the webinar open just for another minute or two, so if anyone does have any specific questions they would like to ask us. But thank you very much for listening. When you log out, you will get posted just to a feedback site. Obviously we love feedback just to see whether there's anything we can improve, or if there's any areas you'd like us to run another webinar on. But overall, thank you very much for your time, everybody, and have a lovely day.